have noticed that most of the guests are mostly white males of 22 episodes.
Yeah,
that
let's get into that.
No,
Who you wound up supporting in the election and why?
Go ahead now. Fences.
In the world of Hollywood, some celebrities are known for their sharp wit and refusal to conform to the so-called woke narrative. These individuals have made headlines not just for their talents, but for how they've handled intense, sometimes confrontational interviews. Here are moments when celebrities didn't hold back from challenging woke ideologies. Jerry Seinfeld. First up is comedian Jerry Seinfeld, who's known for his observational humor, but isn't one to shy away from serious topics. In an interview, Seinfeld was asked for his thoughts on gender and race diversity. Rather than offering a sugar-coated response, he delivered a brutally honest take, leaving the interviewer with little to counter.
I have noticed that most of the guests are mostly white males of 22 episodes.
Yeah, let's get into that.
No, but you
take a look over here, Peter. What do you see? A lot of whiteys. What's going on here? Oh, this really pisses me off. But go ahead. Really pisses me off.
Well, that's okay.
Go ahead.
People had tweeted at me when I said I'm interviewing with Jerry Seinfeld. Okay, ask him about their gender diversity on the show.
Yeah, I mean, people think it's the census or something. I mean, this has got to represent the actual pie chart of America. Who cares? It's just funny. You know, funny is the world that I live in. You're funny, I'm interested. You're not funny, I'm not interested.
Okay.
And I have no interest in gender or race or anything like that, but everyone else is kind of with their little calculating, is this the exact right mix? You know, I think that's, to me, it's anti-comedy. It's anti-comedy. It's more about, you know, PC nonsense than are you making us laugh or not?
Right.
Jordan Peterson. Psychologist and author Jordan Peterson has become a prominent figure in debates surrounding woke ideology, particularly on topics like gender. In one memorable interview, Peterson dismantled the notion that gender is subjectively defined, arguing that such beliefs ignore biological realities. His articulate and well-reasoned responses left little room for rebuttal, making it one of his most compelling interviews.
Okay, so the idea that identity is subjectively defined is utterly preposterous. And it's actually an anti-truth, because if you try to define your identity subjectively, you are a bloody tyrant, and you're going to be an unpopular one too, and you deserve it. But then, secondarily, we have this other weird insistence, and I don't know why we've become so demented that we also accept this, that your identity is subjectively defined, but nonetheless, the core element of your identity is some immutable group characteristic, and the one we stress most is sexual attraction. And I suppose the secondary one is something like race. It's like it's so peculiar that your identity is subjectively defined, but it's also boxed into this very narrow set of parameters, which is, well, the most important thing about you is who and to what degree, to whom and to what degree are you sexually attracted? Like it just leaves me speechless. Well, it doesn't, but you get my point.
Interviews where he often challenges the idea that women are a minority or that society is structured against them. In one particular exchange, he pointed out the absurdity of certain feminist arguments, again leaving his interviewers at a loss for words.
Well, I think it's not a good thing because it plays identity politics games, and I'm not a fan of identity politics games and the collectivist viewpoint. I don't think that men should be set against women. I don't think that we should view the world as a competition between men and women. I don't think we should view history as a structure that pitted oppressed women against the oppressor men. I don't like that story. I think it's a nasty story, and I think it's designed, it's destined to divide us in ways that will not be good. I think it's a story fundamentally predicated on resentment. I don't think it's an accurate view of the way things unfolded in the past. And I don't think women were as powerless or as unable to contribute as the feminists claim they were before, like, 1960. The first thing I would say is that I'm not anti-feminist per se. I mean, I think the idea that the world would benefit from the movement of talent from both sexes into the workplace as rapidly as possible is something that anyone with any sense should share, given the rarity of talent and the necessity for utilizing it. I do stand by my original statement, though, that there's a brand of more radical feminism that insists that our culture is best characterized as an oppressive patriarchy, and I think that, first of all, that's an appalling sociological doctrine, and I think it has very negative psychological effects. And they won't be limited to men, because if it's true that there's something toxic, let's say, about masculinity per se, what that will inevitably mean is that as women adopt more masculine roles, traditionally, what is that toxicity somehow going to go away?
But that's a straw man, because no one says there's anything toxic about masculinity per se.
What do you mean no one says that? The
People
term exists.
No, they.
How is that a straw man?
Well,
where did the term come
from? It's a phrase that's used about forms of masculinity that are harmful to men and women. It's not about masculinity per se. You must know that.
I read the American Psychological Association guidelines for the treatment of boys and men, and I know perfectly well that this is no straw man. And it's not only devoted towards what you might describe as the more aggressive ends of masculine behavior. It's aimed at masculinity in a much broader range of. There's a much broader range of accusations that are under the surface than that. And so I don't see in what way at all that it's a straw man. Let's look at a couple of the strange things that we have as a consequence of the feminist world. We have the insistence that career is going to be the most important part of a woman's life. Now, the leftist feminists, and they're generally leftist, are anti-corporate, but they're pro-career. Okay, so that's very weird. To have a career is to be embedded in what the feminists object to as the patriarchy. To subordinate your cyclicity to the hormonal rhythms of a man, you can't imagine something that would be more like subordination to the demands of the oppressive patriarchy, right? That kind of like sums it up. You're going to suppress the biological manifestations of femininity in favor of a persona that makes you optimally functional in the corporate patriarchy. Men and women won't sort themselves into the same categories if you leave them alone to do it of their own accord. We've already seen that in Scandinavia. It's 20 to 1 female nurses to male, something like that. It might not be quite that extreme, and approximately the same male engineers to female engineers. And that's a consequence of the free choice of men and women in the societies that have gone farther than any other societies to make gender equality the purpose of the law. Those are ineradicable differences. You can eradicate them with tremendous social pressure and tyranny, but if you leave men and women to make their own choices, you will not get equal outcomes.
Right, so you're saying that anyone who believes in equality, whether you call them feminists, call them whatever you want to call them, should basically give up because it ain't going to happen.
Only if they're aiming at equality of outcome.
So you're saying give people equality of opportunity, that's fine.
It's not only fine, it's eminently desirable for everyone, for individuals and for society.
But still women aren't going to make it, that's what you're really saying.
It depends on your measurement techniques. They're doing just fine in medicine. In fact, there are far more female physicians than there are male physicians. There are lots of disciplines that are absolutely dominated by women. Many disciplines, and they're doing great. So
let me put something else to you from the book. You say the introduction of the equal pay for equal work argument immediately complicates even salary comparison beyond practicality for one simple reason. Who decides what work is equal? It's not possible. So the simple question is, do you believe in equal pay?
Well, I made the argument there. It's like it depends on who defines it.
So you don't believe in equal pay?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
Because a lot of people listening to you will just say, I mean, are we going back to the dark ages?
That's because they're actually not listening.
I'm listening very carefully, and I'm hearing you basically saying women need to just accept they're never going to make it on equal terms, equal outcomes is how you defined it.
No, I didn't say that.
If I was a young woman watching that, I would go, well, I might as well just go and play with my Cindy dolls and give up trying at school because I'm not going to get the top job I want because there's someone sitting there saying it's not possible and it's not desirable, it's going to make you miserable.
Desirable. That's what I said. It's a bad social goal. I didn't say that women shouldn't be striving for the top or anything like that, because I don't believe that for a second.
Striving for the top, but you're going to put all those hurdles in their way, as has been in their way for centuries, and that's fine. You're saying that's fine.
No, I really
the patriarchal system is just fine.
That's silly. I do. I think that's silly. I really do. I mean, look at your situation. You're hardly unsuccessful.
Yeah, and I have battled quite hard to get where I've got to.
Good.
So that's okay. Battling is good. This is all about the fight.
It's inevitable.
But you talk about men fighting. I mean, let me just put another thing to you from the book.
Why wouldn't you have to battle for a high-quality position?
Well, I notice in your book you talk about real conversations between men containing quote, an underlying threat of physicality.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
What about real conversations between women? Is that something, or are we sort of too amenable and reasonable?
No, it's just that the domain of physical conflict is sort of off limits for you.
Well, you
it's
just said
rather
that I've
unfortunate.
fought to get where I've got.
Yeah, but
what does that make me?
Well,
a sort of proxy man or something?
I don't imagine that you. Yeah, to some degree, I suspect you're not very agreeable.
So that's the thing. Successful women. I'm not very agreeable.
Right.
But
I've noticed that
successful-
actually in this conversation.
At least
and
we
I'm
can have
sure
a
it
joke about
served your career well.
Successful women, though, basically have to wear the trousers. In your view, they have to sort of become men to succeed. Is what you're saying?
Well, if they're going
I've had to fight to succeed.
if they're
Therefore,
going to
I'm an
compete
honorary
against
man.
men, certainly masculine traits are going to be helpful. I mean, one of the things I do in my counseling practice, for example, when I'm consulting with women who are trying to advance their careers, is to teach them how to negotiate and to be able to say no and to not be easily pushed around and to be formidable. And you need to, if you're going to be successful, you need to be smart, conscientious, and tough.
Well, here's a radical idea. Why don't the bosses adopt the male bosses, shall we say, adopt some female traits so that women don't have to fight and get their sharp elbows out for the pay rises? It's just accepted if they're doing the same job, they get the same pay.
Well, I would say partly because it's not so easy to determine what constitutes the same job.
But that's because, arguably, there are still men dominating our industries, our society, and therefore they've dictated the terms for so long that women have to battle to be like the men.
No, it's not true. It's not true. So, for example,
where's the evidence?
Well, I can give you an example very quickly. So I worked with women who worked in high-powered law firms in Canada for about 15 years, and they were as competent and put together as anybody you would ever meet. And we were trying to figure out how to further their careers. And there was a huge debate in Canadian society at that point that was basically ran along the same lines as your argument, is that if the law firms didn't use these masculine criteria, then perhaps women would do better. But the market sets the damn game. It's like...
And the market is dominated by men.
No, it's
what
not. It's not. The market is dominated by women. They make 80% of the consumer decisions.
How do we get something that isn't a tyrannical patriarchy? If it's composed of women, then it's a tyrannical patriarchy. And if it's composed of men, it's a tyrannical patriarchy. We're kind of out of options.
Right, but, well, or you could have an office in which a blend of people of both
so
sexes
work. So if
work.
it's 50-50, then it's not a tyrannical patriarchy.
No, not 50-50. I'm saying that people...
40-60.
I'm saying that there is clearly, when there's only 15% of male primary school teachers, they do feel marginalised and excluded. So
you think the defining hallmark of a tyrannical social structure is the predominance of one gender, and if that was relatively equalised, then all of a sudden it would be a free and open institution.
I don't think that male primary school teachers are being tyrannised. I do think they are being marginalised, and I do think that they feel excluded and stressed
so what do you do
by
about
that.
that?
Well, this is what I mean. I think actually, and I'm surprised you don't agree with me on this, that actually having more male primary school teachers would be a really good thing, because boys need role models, actually, particularly boys who don't have a father figure in their life. That's really important for them to have a stable adult who shows them what it's like to be a man around the place.
Could be, but you shouldn't achieve it as a consequence of preferential hiring.
Next up, we move on to the legendary actor Kurt Russell, who has long been a staunch defender of the Second Amendment.
Recently, you made some headlines for saying that you felt gun control laws wouldn't deter terrorists. Explain to folks.
Well, you know, these are these things where, first of all, I was in a situation, we do what we call the dog and pony.
Right.
We're out doing the dog and pony selling a picture. You get sometimes you get what you feel is slightly ambushed by somebody who's really got an agenda, and that's sort of, I think, that's my opinion of what happened to me the other day. The last thing I like to watch is entertainers or actors get political. It's just something I can't stand watching. So having said that, no, I was kind of asked to put it in context somehow with this move.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my personal feeling is that there's a big difference between Fantasyland and reality. Fantasyland is what we do. You're either writing something, writing a song, writing a book, doing a movie, doing a television show. That's Fantasyland. Mm-hmm. And that's where that stuff belongs. In reality, when we're dealing with things like terrorism and whatnot, we're all going to have different opinions on how to do it, how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Mine happens to be that I think there's a very strong reason Founding Fathers had for the Second Amendment, and that is that no government ever hasn't had to fight its own people, and its own people hasn't had to fight its own government. We had our Civil War. If that Second Amendment hadn't been there, those people would not have had the opportunity to do what they considered was defending their life, their way, their of living. So I agree with that. I think that's an important part of our existence, and it's basically that stuff.
During a rare interview, Russell found himself in a heated discussion with Hollywood reporter Jeffrey Wells. The conversation turned to gun control, and Russell didn't hesitate to dismantle Wells's anti-gun arguments, emphasizing the importance of the right to bear arms in American democracy. The intensity of the exchange made it one for the records.
Yeah, I don't understand the concepts of conversation of the gun culture. We've lived with guns since, what, the 7th century or something? I don't know.
We all know that right now, guns is a trope. It's it's not a trope, it's a totem. It's a metaphor that disenfranchised white guys need. It makes them feel good because they're being...
You can say what you want. I don't agree with that. So it's not my thing.
But it's statistically...
Well, you can look. If you think gun control or something like that is going to change a terrorist point of view, I think you're like out of your mind. I think I think anybody is. I think it's absolutely insane. The problem we're having right now is that we don't have the concepts of how to turn it around and say, you may think you've got me worried about what you're going to do. Dude, you're about to find out what I'm going to do. And that's going to worry you a lot more. And that's what we need. That will change the concept of gun culture, as you call it, to something of reality, which is, if I'm a hockey team and I got a guy bearing down on me as a goaltender, I'm not concerned about what he's going to do. I'm going to make him concerned about what I'm going to do.
I get that.
To stop him. That's when things change.
Obama's point was that the guys who are on the no-fly list because of terrorist connections can get a gun pretty easily.
They can also make a bomb pretty easily.
Yeah.
So what? They can also get knives and stab you. What are you going to do about that? They can get cars and run you over with them. What are you going to do about that? What are you going to do about that?
They didn't kill the people in San Bernardino.
Oh, but they've killed others that way. Haven't they? Yeah. Yeah. So what are you going to do? Outlaw everything? That isn't the answer.
Just put something.
Put some controls. What? So the people who want to defend themselves can't?
No, not so you can't. Just so the idiots can't get a hold of them.
Do you really believe they're not going to? Are you serious about that? Are you seriously? What good will that? Oh my God! You and I just disagree. You and I just disagree. I understand that you think that you can control the behavior of people that are dead set on taking your way of life away from you. I think you can control that.
No.
And there's only one thing you can do with that, and say, no, dude, that's not going to happen.
Denzel Washington. Not just an award-winning actor, but also a man of strong principles. During one interview, he called out a reporter for spreading fake news, stressing the importance of honesty in journalism. Washington's critique was sharp, making it clear that he doesn't tolerate dishonesty, especially in the media.
There's been a lot of buzz about this fake news. You were the subject of a fake news story.
Oh yeah, what'd they say? I was running for president? No, I voted. No, what'd they say?
You switched your support.
I switched. Yeah.
What do you make of all the fake news and it affects
If you don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed.
So what do you do?
That's the great question. What is the long-term effect of too much information? One of the effects is the need to be first, not even to be true anymore. So what a responsibility you all have to tell the truth, not just to be first, but to tell the truth. We live in a society now where it's just first. Who cares? Get it out there. We don't care who it hurts. We don't care who we destroy. We don't care if it's true. Just say it, sell it. Anything you practice, you'll get good at. Including BS.
You told me last time.
Okay. But you heard me? Does that make sense?
But that's not all. In another interview, when pressed about his voting choices, Washington gave a classic no-nonsense response that shut down any further probing.
Mr. Washington, you're here in D.C. during an interesting time with the transition in the White House. Just wondering who you wound up supporting in the election and why.
Go ahead now. Fences.
How about this? I don't know if you saw it. There's a fake news story going around. It got thousands of shares online. You saw that? And I just thought you might want to clear it up because people are confused.
There's a few words that start with F and end with K, but that one ends with E, but it starts with F.
Yeah, but just too vague. You got to be specific right now. F, K, and E.
What was the question?
Well, that was a question. Who you wound up supporting in the election, presidential election?
None of your business.
None of my business?
None of your business.
Well, I'm only asking because the story was online, but that's okay.
Huh?
Let me ask you this. What issue do you hope President-elect Trump tackles? What's number one in your mind with the new administration?
I don't know. I'd have to be more informed to just say off the top of my head the number one issue. I'm not sure. Education, jobs, health. I mean, there's so many. Yeah.
I want to just ask you, though, about the issue of race relations, because the film touches upon that. Right now, under President Obama, over the last 8 years, in your mind, have race relations improved under his leadership?
Race relationships have to do with race relationships. You're white or whatever you are. I'm black or whatever I am. We're standing here talking now. That's how we get things done. You can't legislate love. The President of the United States can't legislate us into liking each other. We have to step forward and ask questions about each other and engage. There's no law that says, oh, because I'm president, you all got to get along now. So it's up to us.
And there's been so many protests in America, especially during the election. Black Lives Matter movement, for example, and those issues. Has that movement in particular, the Black Lives Matter movement, helped race relations or not in America?
Well, listen, we live in America. And in America, we have the freedom to express ourselves. We shouldn't take that for granted. So whatever the movements are, whether you agree with them or don't, they have the right to express themselves. So that's one of the great things about being in this country, that you do have the right to protest.
He also spoke out against blaming the prison system for the incarceration rates of black people in another interview, offering a perspective that challenged the interviewer's assumptions.
Incarceration rates in America has been a problem, especially as opposed to minorities. And Roman delves into the issues around the legal system. Do you think we've made any headway in the legal system?
I think it's more important to make headway in our own house. By the time the system comes into play, the damage is done. They're not locking up 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
I was in Chicago a couple of 3-4 weeks ago, and we saw these little kids on bikes with masks on the side of their head, like 5 or 6 of them. And the driver said, yeah, they're little yummies. I said, who? He said, little yummies. Look up, Google Little Yummy. Little Yummy was an 11-year-old murderer.
Wow.
And you look at his picture, you'll see the headshot of him, and he's like this. And he got murdered at 11 by a 14-year-old.
Wow.
Who's doing life now, and a 16-year-old.
That makes no sense.
You blame the system? Where was his father? It starts in the house. It starts in the home. And well, my father got locked up. Well, where was his father?
Yeah.
Like I did talk about my 3 closest friends, and they did, 15 to 25. One did 28, this and that. I was the only one of the 3 that had a father in my life, even though my parents were together. But I still had a father who was a gentle man and a good example. Yeah. And they didn't. We can blame the system if we want. But they didn't lock any of us up at 7.
Yeah.
We were all doing enough to get locked up at 13. My parents sent me in another direction. They didn't have anybody to help them, and they kept doing what they was doing. And the system got them. So the system is rigged, but why? All the more reason not to help it.
While promoting his movie Fences, Washington was asked why it had a black director. His response highlighted the importance of representation and made it clear why it was a deliberate and necessary choice. Writing skills found himself in a heated discussion after Caitlyn Jenner received the Arthur Ashe Courage Award. During a discussion, Shapiro didn't shy away from addressing Jenner's genetics, which led to a tense and unforgettable exchange.
You're not educated on genetics?
Would you like to discuss the genetics? Or
Well,
no?
no,
What
no.
are your genetics?
So I'd stay away from the genetics and back to the brain scans. You cut that out now, or you'll go home in an ambulance.
Yeah, that seems mildly inappropriate for a political discussion.
Candace Owens. Conservative commentator Candace Owens is another figure who doesn't hold back. In a clip from one of her shows, Owens criticized the culture of victimhood among young people, arguing that it's become uncool to act oppressed. Her blunt perspective and unfiltered opinions make her a polarizing figure, but one who certainly knows how to make her point.
Is that what is happening right now in the black community? You're going to hear it in this room first. There is an ideological civil war happening. Black people that are focused on their past and shouting about slavery, and black people that are focused on their futures, okay? That's really what it comes down to, okay? I can guarantee you what you're seeing happening is victim mentality versus victor mentality. And
That's
I promise
great,
you,
by the way.
the people here are going to win.
I love that.
And there's no doubt in my mind. I can tell you right now who is going to be better off. When we look 20 years and we look at the faces in this room, who is going to be better off are the girls that are sitting right here and across this room, because they don't have your mentality. Victim mentality is not cool. I don't know why people like being oppressed. It's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. I love oppression. We're oppressed. 400 years of slavery, Jim Crow, which, by the way, none of you guys lived through. Your grandparents did, and it's embarrassing that you utilize their history. You utilize their history, and you come in here with more emotion than they ever had when they were living through it. More emotion than they ever had when they were living through it. It's embarrassing. You're not living through anything right now. You're overly privileged Americans. It's what's going on right now.
Damn, you teach them, girl. Yeah!
Over here shouting, and I want to say some more, I'm not done. Over here shouting and booing the officers. That's a black officer in the back right there. Are you aware
Thank you for your
that
service,
there are
man.
black officers in the world? In District 11 in Chicago, where more black people, in District 11 in Chicago, where more black people have been gunned down than any place in America, which I went to go visit and speak to those cops, they are all black. When you launch a war on cops, you are launching a war on black men as well. I'm so ashamed of the way you guys are acting and the fact that you love being oppressed. I don't get it, and I'm going to tell you, you're not going to ever make me think that oppression is cool. You're never going to make me think oppression is cool. Okay, I have no idea what you said, but I'm just telling you, oppression is never gonna come in. It's a poor fad. It's not cool. It's just not cool, man.
These moments are evidence of how some celebrities are willing to speak their minds, regardless of the consequences. So what's your take on them? Who do you think made their point heard the loudest? Let us know in the comments section. And help us out by liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel for more content like this every week. Thanks for watching, and as always, we will see you next time.